My mom leaned over at my birthday dinner and whispered to my dad, "While everyone's here, tell your son to go change her locks." My brother got up, grabbed his jacket, left. Nobody looked at me, so nobody saw me smile. He came back an hour later, white as a ghost. Sat down. Couldn't get a single word out. My mom stared at him. "What happened?" He just shook his head. She looked at me. I looked back at her and picked up my glass. I had known about this plan for 3 months. I just needed them to try it. "My name is Nadia. I'm 32 years old. And the apartment at the center of all of this? My late father bought it years before he ever met my mother. His name alone on the deed. His money. His decision. When he died 18 months ago, his will had one sentence that mattered. The apartment goes to Nadia, not the estate, not to anyone else. To me, by name." My mother learned that at the funeral, and that was when the campaign started. 3 months later, at a family gathering, she told my aunt, "Cole needs it more. Nadia has a stable income." At Christmas, she told another relative, "We're still sorting through his affairs. These things take time." The estate had been closed for months. She knew it. She said it anyway. Then came a cousin's wedding, where my mother accepted quiet sympathy from people who didn't have the full picture, nodding, sighing, carrying the weight of everything she was managing, including, somehow, a property that was never hers to manage. 6 months ago, my brother sat at my kitchen table and folded a paper napkin into smaller and smaller squares. "You know Mum's been talking about the apartment with the cousins, right?" I looked at him. "Are you warning me or asking me to give in?" He stared at his coffee. Said nothing that mattered. I stayed quiet. But what my brother didn't understand, I've spent 8 years in a classroom watching adults use people as instruments. I know that look. I saw exactly what was happening. What I found out later was this. My mother had already signed a purchase agreement with a buyer. That agreement had a clause. Missed the deadline for delivering clean title documentation, and she owed $22,000 out of her own pocket. The deadline fell 4 days after my birthday dinner. She didn't choose that night because she wanted to celebrate me. She chose it because it was her last window. 3 weeks before the dinner, 3 things happened. My neighbor stopped me in the hallway. My mother had come by the previous Tuesday, she said, to drop off some of my father's things. I'd been at work. Nothing was left behind. Then a letter from the estate attorney arrived in my mailbox already opened, refolded on the wrong crease. Then a scuff mark on my doorframe, fresh. The kind a copied key leaves when the cut isn't quite right. Any one of those things I could explain away. All 3 together told me everything I needed to know. I called the estate attorney that evening. "I think she's been inside my apartment." Then I replaced the lock with a smart lock controlled by an app on my phone. No physical key anywhere. And I waited. When the buyer's agent ran his pre-listing title search on the property, the name that came back on the deed wasn't my mother's. It wasn't anyone she had the legal right to represent. He called her. Twice. Left 2 messages. She didn't return either one. After 48 hours, the estate attorney's office sent him a formal written notice. She represented the properties titled owner. Any further action without authorization constituted participation in a fraudulent transaction. The title search inquiry had already been flagged through the county recorder's system. He called his own attorney within the hour. The advice was brief. Forward everything. Right now. He did, not from conscience, from calculation. His real estate license was worth more to him than my mother's silence. The email chain told the whole story. 4 months before my birthday, my mother had written to him, "I am the estate representative. We can proceed with the appraisal." The estate had been closed. She had 0 authority. He'd asked for ownership verification 10 days later. Routine. Standard. Her reply sat unanswered for over a week. Then she wrote back. She doesn't need to know about this until after the closing. Her words, her account, her phone. At the bottom of the chain, a forwarded message from my father to my mother. Subject line. Saturday. 1 line. Cole says he can go that night. My brother knew. He had agreed. His name was now attached to a documented fraud attempt. The day before my birthday, the estate attorney printed the full chain, sealed it in an envelope, and handed it to my best friend. She tucked it into her jacket pocket. Morning of the dinner, I made one call. Ready? Everything's in place. I got dressed, drove to my mother's house, walked through that front door, smiling. When my brother walked back through that front door, every guest was still at the table. He sat down. He didn't look at our mother. She read his face. Her hand tightened around her glass. What did you find? Even quiet. He reached into his jacket and placed the sealed envelope on the table, the one my best friend had left at my apartment door. My father glanced at the envelope, then at his wife. He could see the subject line through the flap. That's not what it looks like. My father pushed back from the table, slowly, without a word. 12 people had come to that birthday dinner to witness what my mother was calling a family decision. They watched the room change temperature instead. They didn't know what was happening, just that something had shifted, and it wasn't going back. Coats came off chair backs. Polite goodbyes. The kind of exit people make when they sense something private building inside someone else's house. Once the last guest was gone, my mother turned to me. How dare you do this here? On your own birthday? My father said nothing. His silence had changed. It wasn't passive anymore. It was the silence of a man who had just seen his own name referenced in an email subject line and was very carefully thinking about what that meant. 3 weeks later, a certified letter arrived. My mother had filed a formal will contest. Her attorney claimed my late father had not been of sound mind when he wrote the will. Then she contacted the buyer's agent directly, told him the forwarded emails were private communications shared without her permission. His attorney called back and said they had already advised full cooperation with the estate side. The family calls started coming in. An aunt, why are you doing this? Your mother is devastated. A cousin. All this over an apartment. Her version was spreading fast. The estate attorney had manipulated an old man near the end of his life. Her daughter was acting out of greed. She was the grieving widow being punished for caring too much. My brother didn't answer her calls. He didn't call me either. His silence had taken on a different weight, not the comfortable kind from before. The kind that belongs to someone standing on a ledge, too afraid to move in any direction. I called the attorney. What do we have? Everything. When do you want to move? Now. The probate hearing. My mother's attorney went first. Testamentary incapacity. He laid out the argument that the man who had owned my apartment for decades hadn't understood what he was signing before he died. Then the estate attorney opened her folder and pressed play. My late father had recorded a video statement 14 months before his death. His own attorney sat beside him, on camera. His hands were steady. His voice was clear. He looked directly into the lens. The apartment was purchased before his marriage. His separate property from the first day. It goes to his daughter, and then he said my name, because she is the only one who treated my things as if they had history, not a price. He named my mother. He described 3 specific incidents. He did not pause, once. My mother's attorney watched the entire recording without turning toward his client. When the screen went dark, he leaned over and spoke quietly into her ear. The will contest was withdrawn before the judge said a single word. The emails were already filed as part of the hearing documentation submitted in advance by the estate attorney. They were now a matter of public court record. Anyone with a case number and 10 minutes at the courthouse could pull them up. She doesn't need to know about this until after the closing. My mother's own words, printed, permanent, attached to her name, in a public file. The buyer's agent had submitted a written statement confirming she had misrepresented herself as the estate representative throughout their entire arrangement. His real estate board review was already in progress. Her narrative, I only wanted to protect the family, sat in the same public file as that email. No commentary needed. The contrast spoke for itself. The morning after the hearing, my father retained his own attorney. Separately. Not the initiator. No financial stake. His name had appeared in a forwarded message he hadn't written. He submitted his statement, stopped discussing the apartment, and stopped having many opinions about much of anything after that. Then my mother called my brother, not to process what had happened, to give him instructions. She needed him to tell her attorney that he'd misunderstood the birthday dinner, that he'd gone to the apartment for a simple errand, that there had been no plan. She texted him a draft, a sworn declaration. He read it twice. Then he called a friend from college, a real estate attorney, and read the draft over the phone. 4 words back, Cole, that's perjury, don't. He sat with the phone in his hand for a long time. Then he called the estate attorney himself, not to be a hero, because the alternative was signing a document that made him a criminal for a plan he hadn't designed and a deal he hadn't closed. He gave his statement what our mother told him before the dinner, what he was sent to do, what he found when the spare key no longer fit the lock he'd expected to find. Standard, expected. Then he added one sentence nobody asked for. She said, "If we don't do this tonight, we lose the deposit. $22,000, confirmed by the only person who had been in that room when she said it. He didn't have to add that. He did anyway. My mother called me the day after the withdrawal. I let it ring through to voicemail. "We can talk," she said. "I just want to fix things. Please." I played it once, all the way through. Then I saved it. Set my phone on the kitchen counter. The smart lock notification lit up on the screen. Door secured, 11:52 p.m. The same table where my mother had whispered that plan with the candles and the uncut cake, and 12 people who had no idea what they were sitting inside of, was the same table where the family eventually read about her. Withdrawn case in the public court filing. Same room. Same chairs. Different power. I slept through the night for the first time in months. The civil complaint settled out of court. My mother paid my legal fees around $15,000, covering both the failed will contest and the settlement. She paid it quietly, the way people pay for things they can't mention in public. Some family members pulled back after that, not dramatically, just gradually, the way people do when they've stood on the wrong side of something and they know it. My father filed his statement, kept his house, and stopped being someone with opinions about the apartment. He stopped having many opinions about a lot of things. My brother called 3 times before I picked up. When I finally did, "I know you were afraid, but I also know you chose the easy road for a long time." The door stayed open, just not all the way. Weeks later, the buyer's agent called once. He'd reported himself to the real estate board before anyone could ask him to. I'd rather hand over my own head than wait for someone else to request it. I hung up without answering. But I understood his logic. The estate attorney closed the file and mailed a handwritten note. "Your father knew exactly what he was doing." My best friend took me to dinner, didn't make a speech, ordered dessert before the main course. That night, I changed the smart lock access code one final time. Nobody else has the new one. Greed almost always arrives dressed as family duty. I've seen it up close. Cole needs it more. We're just managing the estate. I'm still your mother. Every sentence was designed to make me feel that holding on to what my late father left me was somehow the selfish act. Here's the truth I carried out of all of it. Protecting what belongs to you is not selfishness. It is honoring the person who gave it to you. My father couldn't be in that room the night the hearing ended, but he had left everything ready so I wouldn't need him to be. He planned for this before I even knew there was anything to plan for. If you've ever had to protect yourself from your own family, leave it in the comments. I read all of them. Subscribe if this story stayed with you. The next one will leave you speechless.